week concludes with Joe Namath. His charismatic style brought football into a new limelight and made him a megastar. Hi, I'm Al Michaels. At last year's Hall of Fame reunion, no player received a more enthusiastic reaction from the crowd than Joe Namath, reminding us that Broadway Joe still remains one of the most important figures in the game. As a player, he gave the sport a new revitalized energy and caught everyone's attention with a guarantee.
I got news for you. We're going to win the game, I guarantee it.
The New York Jets are the world champions in a stunning upset.
Joe Namath was the perfect blend of style and substance. He was pro football's first mega-dollar player, a rocket-armed quarterback with a rock star persona who blurred lines, mocked conventions, and became a shaggy-haired symbol of his generation, the only athlete ever to be placed on Nixon's enemies list. His agent once predicted that eventually Joe Namath, the football player, will not be as significant as the idea of him. More than 3 decades after he delivered on his guarantee to win Super Bowl III, the idea of Broadway Joe is alive as ever. Joe Willie Namath grew up in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, a working-class town in the hills outside Pittsburgh, made up of immigrant families who toiled in the nearby steel mills.
You know, we called it the League of Nations because where we lived out there was Hungarian people, Italian people, Polish people, blacks, and it was just a great place to grow up.
My father came from Hungary at a young age. He was the last one from his family to come to America. So I often had thought about that, you know, what's it like to be left behind?
Born on May 31st, 1943, Joe, like his father, was the youngest in his family. But in the crowded Namath house, being left alone was the last of Joe's worries.
I had 3 brothers, 6, 9, and 12 years older than I am, and a sister that's 6 years older than I am. And they looked after me pretty good. Of course, I was 15 before I found out my name wasn't Shut Up.
I think he might be exaggerating a little bit there. I think he was 13.
Being the youngest in the family, you get a certain type of education there.
Being the child of a steelworker also provided an education.
Since my dad walked me through the steel mills when I was 11 years old, I swore to myself I'd never get caught in that steel mill again. I worked in a paper mill, I worked for the city of Beaver Falls, but I wasn't going back in the steel mill.
By the time he reached high school, it was obvious he wouldn't have to. He excelled in baseball, basketball, and football. With so many options, it seemed the only thing that could keep him from a bright future was himself.
I tried to quit playing football altogether when I was a sophomore in high school. They took 60-some players to camp, and a few of us they didn't take to camp. And my heart was broken, and when I came back from camp, I went to our coach and I told him I was going to focus on baseball and basketball. And Coach Ross, it was, looked at me and said, "No, you're just a sophomore. I want you to stick it out. I think you can develop into a player."
2 years later, he did become a player under the tutelage of varsity coach Larry Bruno, who became his friend and mentor after Joe's parents divorced.
They had a very unique relationship, the two of them. So I think sometimes maybe when Joe was down a little bit, you know, he'd go see Larry, he'd talk to Larry, and Larry would talk to him and, you know, make Joe feel a little bit better.
There's a couple of things that made me realize that Joe was a great kid, not only just a quarterback, but he was my punter his senior year. And he hurt his ankle the week before. He could run and everything, but I wasn't sure whether he could punt the ball. So we're on the sideline, and I said to him, "Joe, are you going to be able to punt?" He put his arm around me, looked me right in the eye, and says, "Coach, we're not going to have to punt."
In his only season as a starter, Namath led Beaver Falls High School to its first championship in 36 years.
A lot of people thought that Joe was cocky. It wasn't cockiness so much, it was confidence. Joe was like a second coach out there. He knew the offense so well. Nobody else could have done it like Joe.
Namath was set to play college football at the University of Maryland, but low scores on an entrance exam denied him admission. When Maryland's coaches realized he could never play for them, they also made sure he'd never play against them.
When they did release him, we immediately found out about it because they didn't want him on the Eastern Seaboard. I think anyone up there would have probably paid his tuition for him to come here.
You know, I had never visited Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I didn't know about Alabama's football, and I liked Alabama because I liked their headgears. That's all I know about them.
If Namath knew little about Alabama, Alabama had no idea what to make of the 18-year-old alien who interrupted practice one day.
We were going at it pretty hot and heavy. Next thing we know, we saw somebody approach on the football field.
He had on his sport coat, tie, hat, and sunglasses. Toothpick on each ear.
Very form-fitted suit, and it glistened in the daylight, in the sunlight. And we always call that like a battery-operated suit.
And we're walking out on the track that separates the fields, and Coach Bryant's up in the tower.
Nobody ever went up on that tower, especially not a football player or a recruit.
So we were all looking, and here come a guy, and he told him, "Come on up, Joe."
I said, okay, you know, so I climbed up there.
Everybody said, "Who is that guy going up on the tower with Coach Bryant?"
We knew then that he was probably very special.
Met Coach Bryant, and we talked for about 15, or he talked for about 15 minutes. I swear to you, I understood one word he said in 15 minutes, and I didn't know what it meant. He'd point his going, "William, a stud." You know, he'd go over here, "Well, he stood right now." You know, I understood the word stud, but I didn't know what it meant.
Coach Bear Bryant's newest stud donned the Crimson Tide uniform in 1961.
I was totally confused as an 18-year-old. I went from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, University of Alabama, and the people were wonderful there. But when I saw water fountains with colored and white and restrooms with colored and white, I was so ignorant. I didn't know that that existed. Back in Western Pennsylvania, it was just a melting pot of all different kinds of people. And we learned early on not to be judgmental.
Adapting to his new teammates and coach was a slow process.
It was a very uptight kind of situation there. There was so much respect for him, and it was so disciplined that even riding to a game, you were afraid to talk loud on the bus.
Joe kind of acted like he wanted to act. It was a little different than what we Southern guys acted like in the dormitory, around the dormitory, off the field.
And realizing he's coming from a different atmosphere, different mores and everything, Coach was kind of kind to him and encouraging.
After Namath led Alabama to an Orange Bowl victory in his sophomore year, Bryant called him the best athlete he ever coached, and even allowed him small but noticeable liberties, one of which became a permanent trademark.
When I started wearing white shoes, for example, that was a trip. Honest to God, I did not even think about it. And one of my teammates says, "Joe, really, Coach Bryant gonna get you." I said, "What are you talking about, man?" He said, "You can't go out there with white shoes." And I said, "Oh, man, come on, you know." And you know what? Coach Bryant didn't say anything about it when I did go out there.
Late in his junior year, with the team heading toward another major bowl, Namath was seen drinking a beer, a major violation of team rules. This time, Bryant did not look the other way.
When Coach Bryant confronted him with it, he said, "Joe, I'm going to take your word for it. Whatever you tell me, it's your word against anybody else's. Did you break training rules? Did you drink a beer?" Joe said, "Yes, I did, Coach. Can't lie to you."
Coach Bryant said, "Well, it'll either make him or break him." He said, "But I got to suspend him." So we did. Joe had all the stuff. He had the potential in football and everything else, and knew what he was doing, but he said, "Gonna have to pay the price."
He could have gone a lot of ways. He could have gone home. He could have, you know, pulled away from Coach Bryant, but he didn't.
The suspension cost him the final 2 games of his junior year, but Namath returned, and despite a serious knee injury that hindered him throughout his senior year, he led Alabama to a national championship. The brash quarterback not only learned his lesson, he embraced the bear who taught it to him.
It was one of the best relationships I've ever had in my life. Now, I was disciplined by Coach Bryant at one time, justifiably, and I think that brought us closer together even. I could have quit so many times, and I would have quit doing things in my life so many times if it wasn't for other people. Other people kept reinforcing me.
Young Joe Namath had thrived in the disparate worlds of the Rust Belt and the Deep South. Ahead of him, was an even greater challenge.
You're watching Joe Namath, part of NFL Greats Week on Biography.
The Zales exclusive Valentine keepsake box with chocolate hearts, a Limoges porcelain box, and a diamond pendant for just $99. There is sweetness in here at ZalesandZales.com.
What's better than getting more money back on your taxes? How about winning $1 million? Double check your taxes with H&R Block and you could win $1 million. The H&R Block $1 Million Giveaway. Call today to make an appointment.
1 part tulip, 2 parts French vanilla. Add 1 whitewash shutter. Mix 1 quart lazy afternoon. Stir in 1 cup sunshine and a pinch of fresh sand. Serves 1 or a family of 6. Swedish Home by Ethan Allen. All the ingredients you need to make an elegantly simple home.
Where is it written that only a sports car can behave like a sports car? Not here.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. Ha. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah, zoom, 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 zoom. Yeah, zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah, zoom, zoom, zoom. Hey, mom, what?
The powerful 2-liter Mazda Protege. Why should sports cars have all the fun?
Next Friday on Biography, what's so great about Gretzky?
He wasn't the biggest kid in the world, not the strongest. I thought he was one of the players' kids.
A world-class athlete.
He was the greatest player that ever played the game.
He sees things on the ice that no one else can see.
Who never wanted to leave home.
I was tremendously homesick. I spent many nights crying myself to sleep.
The great one.
Gretzky, he's there!
Wayne Gretzky, an all-new Biography. Next Friday at 8/7 Central on A&E. Australia. The land of adventure. The land of thrills. The land of romance. And the land of amazing deals. Right now, we've got heaps of 2-week vacations starting from under $2,000 on Australia.com. So pick one. We can't wait to say g'day.
In 1965, Joe Namath was one of the nation's top pro football prospects. His timing could not have been better. The landscape of pro football was changing as an upstart called the American Football League, with its wide-open, fan-friendly style of play, challenged the established National Football League. Dismissed by NFL supporters for its Mickey Mouse brand of football, the AFL began to fill seats and gain credibility by paying top dollar for top talents. By 1965, the demand for a marquee quarterback was at an all-time high.
Coach Paul Bear Bryant said, Joe, you know these pros are going to be coming to you about signing a contract. Do you have any idea what you're going to ask for? I said, no, sir, but these guys in the last year or so had signed for $100,000 or so. I think I'll ask for something like that. And Coach Bryant said, well, you go ahead and ask him for $200,000. Better place to start.
In the negotiations that followed, the NFL's St. Louis Cardinals and the AFL's New York Jets each met Namath's initial price tag. But the Jets, led by new president Sonny Werblin and head coach Weeb Ewbank, blew him away.
Mr. Werblin started out, listen, this is what I'm going to offer you. I want you to take it. $300,000 to play for the Jets. I was only thinking of $2 to start with, right?
The final numbers were unprecedented. $427,000 for 3 years. Before he ever donned a Jet uniform, Namath was the highest paid player in pro football. But Sonny Werblin, who had made his name in the entertainment industry, discovering such talents as Dean Martin, was paying for more than just a quarterback.
He was drafted and paid all that money for his personality. Sonny was a showbiz guy, and he found his showbiz quarterback.
I know he sat down and talked to Joe. He said, we've got to get as much publicity for this team as we can, because we've got to get the American Football League on the front page of the sports sheet each and every day, one way or another.
With his white shoes and candid words, Namath provided exactly the buzz his new boss was looking for.
Sonny Werblin brought him in, and he had a small, kind of an informal press conference at the old Toots Shores. And Lou Efrat of the New York Times at that time said, Joe, you know, you got all this money, this big contract. He said, what happens if you don't make it, Joe? You know, what happens to the money? What happens? Just suppose you don't make it. And Joe just looked at him and said, I'll make it.
Thus was Broadway Joe born. But before Namath could prove his worth to the world, he had to prove it to his peers.
The veterans, the real veterans, really hated him. The guys that have been playing for 12 years and were making $18,000, and this guy comes in and makes $427,000, didn't throw a ball yet.
If he couldn't have played football the way he did, then all that other stuff, you would have laughed at it. But because he could play the way he did, you didn't laugh at anything. He had the best-looking drop and the best-looking release and the best-looking pass that I've ever seen.
And he didn't just luckily get it there. He zipped it there about 30 yards across the field, right over the right shoulder. No way the defensive back can get to it. Shut out. That's the kind of pass Namath would do without blinking your eye.
I used to challenge him sometimes on a quick route. I'd do a quick out and look back and work out, and I said, Joe, you can't hit me quick enough. And he'd take the ball, turn around and throw it as hard as he could, and right there it was. I'd catch it as I made my turn, but I learned real quick not to do that without the helmet, because he might take your ear off.
He just delivered the ball so well. I mean, with purpose. I mean, almost with an anger. Boom, it was out there. I'm going to complete this. The hell with you. And it was like one of these anti-aircraft guns or something, you know, where you aim this way, then this way, then this way, then this way. And he did it just boom, 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 pew. And it was arrogant and tough and vicious. You know, he'd jam it in there, and if a guy intercepted, he'd curse him on the way out and then jam it in there again. A great way to play quarterback, I think.
Namath transformed the Jets from a laughingstock into a sold-out attraction. In just his third season, he led the team to its first ever winning record and became the first pro quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards in a season. His daring style of play on the field was matched only by his daring style of play off the field.
At that point in his life, Joe never thought about yesterday and never thought about tomorrow. He lived entirely in the moment. He had this image, which originally was created by Sonny Werblin, and then Joe continued it. Joe went out. Joe was seen in public.
Famous athletes had lived the bachelor lifestyle before, but never so unapologetically.
The cameras were there to take a picture of Joe with 2 girls, 3 girls, taking pictures of him going in his apartment, taking pictures of the girls coming out early in the morning.
There was a time that ball players were supposed to fit a certain profile. And for the most part, they did. But things change. You know, personalities change. And having a job that I was very secure in, I was able to speak up and say my piece for the most part.
It seems almost un-American to me for a bachelor not to, you know, go around having a drink with a lady now and then. And why all of a sudden that's becoming evil in me, I don't know. But some people don't like it. Well, you can't please everybody. I'm just trying to get along, you know, just trying to get by. Look at that shot.
In the 50s, Johnny Unitas, a quiet kid from western Pennsylvania, defined the image of the pro quarterback. In the 60s, Joe Namath, a not-so-quiet kid from western Pennsylvania, was turning that image on its head. Unlike the private Unitas, Namath invited America into his home, a home America found carpeted with a llama skin rug.
Maybe I went out of my way without knowing it to rebel against how the role should be played.
Namath's critics wondered aloud how he could play the part of championship quarterback if he didn't look it. The people who saw him every day were discovering that one thing had little to do with the other.
His image portrayed off the field
was not exactly like his image on the field. I mean, he was what you might call the epitome of a professional football player.
Temptation was always nearby, but Namath never mixed business with pleasure.
I mean, there's this image of Joe Namath being this guy who stayed out all night and just walked on the field and played. Every day at our practices, the last three people off the field were Namath, Sauer, and Maynard.
We'd stay out and work on pass patterns, throwing, catching. I worked with him after practice to such an extent that we would tell us to get off the field.
He was a student of the game. He knew a great deal. And on the sideline, he would ask the wide receivers, the tackles, the guards, what are they doing to you? What do you think about this play or that play?
I mean, I don't think you have to leave it to the sideline.
We had one busted play with Namath in 8 years. Now, that's called communications.
People would ask me, do you block better for Joe Namath than you block for the other quarters? We say, absolutely not. But, you know, when you look at the film, yeah, we do block better for Joe than we block for anybody else. I mean, if you had to fight a guy in the gonads and take him down, you'd take him down before you let him get to Joseph.
His methods were unconventional, but by 1968, Namath had led the Jets to the AFL championship game.
Okay.
His presence inside the locker room was making a difference as well.
Flank left, 63 seam on one. Ready?
Jets were a Southern team then, and there was a bit of an ugly racial situation going on.
Guys in the bar at night be calling the other guys niggers and things like that, and I used to get uptight about it, and we brought it out in meetings and got it straightened out.
He was always very aware of black-white situations and how to smooth it out, and the black players were very loyal to him.
He would come down to Harlem and go to dinner with us. He would come down there and hang out and have a good time, have a beer.
He was a person that respected you, whether you were a man, woman, or child, and that's rare. Joe had all these good qualities which people didn't really care about. They wanted to know about broads and the booze, and of course, that was a large part of his life. Joe was seen in public very, very early in the morning of the day that they played the Oakland Raiders for the AFL championship. And a friend of mine happened to see him at 3 o'clock in the morning with a bottle in one hand and a blonde on the other arm. And my friend, who was wont to gamble, ran to the nearest bookmaker he could find to place all the money he could on the Raiders, which he did, and he lost.
Namath threw 3 touchdown passes against the Oakland Raiders, leading the Jets to a 27-23 come-from-behind victory in the AFL championship game. After just 4 years, Joe Namath and his Jets were headed to the Super Bowl.
Took a long time coming, 4 years. He wanted to win every year, first year on.
You're watching Joe Namath, part of NFL Greats Week on Biography.
Just stay in its tracks.
Just stay in its tracks.
The Jaguar X-Type, the only car in its class with all-wheel drive, standard. For exceptional values on the X-Type, visit your Jaguar retailer today.
Who wears white after Labor Day? Who wears white after Labor Day? Well, that was once considered a fashion faux pas. Now you can wear white any time of the year.
Want expert advice whenever you need it? Come to Office Depot, where our people listen, understand, and help.
How can I get organized?
With the new generation of handhelds, you can manage multiple... It'd be nice if everything was like that. Office Depot. What you need to know.
They both worked their way up the ladder. Same executive perks, same six-figure salaries. So why does one look forward to early retirement, while the other looks forward to the 15th and the 31st? Some people already know our financial representatives excel at a lot more than life insurance. Northwestern Mutual Financial Network. Are you there yet?
Today's business thought. Most hosting companies don't own their network. They hand off your data to someone else. Who hands it off to someone else? Handoffs? This isn't a football. This is your data. A message from WorldCom, the world's farthest reaching IP network. And no handoffs. Leave nothing to chance. WorldCom, Generation D.
It's the best party in Hollywood.
Go into the private quarters and secret rooms of the world's most famous hedonist.
Anything that can happen happens here.
Inside the Playboy Mansion, February 10th at 8, 7 Central on A&E.
In 1966, the NFL agreed to merge with the AFL. As part of the deal, the two leagues' best teams would face off in a championship game. But the first Super Bowl flopped at the gate. There were 30,000 empty seats at the LA Coliseum, and Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers confirmed NFL superiority by crushing the Kansas City Chiefs and repeating the feat a year later against the Oakland Raiders. Entering Super Bowl III, Don Shula's Baltimore Colts were believed to be even stronger than Lombardi's Packers. The Colts were installed as 17-point favorites against Joe Namath's Jets.
The Jets started getting letters and telegrams and phone calls, players and owners, from all the other AFL teams. And they said, you've got to win this game, and you've got to get us legitimacy. This became more than a Jets game. This became a sort of cause.
The cause resonated far beyond the AFL. In January of 1969, everything was being viewed through a political lens.
We're going to march until justice comes.
Even football.
The NFL stood for the old values, and the AFL, with Namath especially, stood for personality and individualism. Joe Namath was seen almost as the Antichrist, with his white shoes and his hair flowing behind his helmet.
There was a lot of BS going on around with Vietnam, with hair length, with faces, with clothes and all that. To me, people were making a deal out of it were wrong. They weren't allowing us to be ourselves, to express ourselves, and still fit in society in a contributing way. We got a letter once from the president of the league demanding that we shave. Coach Eubank hid that letter and didn't show his team until after we clinched the championship.
Weeb Eubank knew not to mess with a good thing, and when he and his team began looking at films of the Colts, they were shocked to learn they wouldn't have to.
A funny thing happened. The Jets turn on the film of the Colts, and they're watching this defense not being able to handle certain kinds of passing games that the Jets themselves were doing so well. The Jets came from a passing league, and they felt they could actually kill these guys. And so this game stopped becoming a crusade for the Jets into something where they didn't want to become too overconfident.
As Super Bowl week wore on, the Jets' confidence became increasingly difficult to hide.
The guy that really guaranteed it was never heard or even heard about. In that one of our prep meetings prior to the game, it was, I believe, our tight end, Pete Lammett, says, we will kick out of this club, and I guarantee it. We've shut the film off. Says, get out. You guys are too cocky. Joe went out that night and told the world, I guarantee we'll beat this club.
I was down at the Miami Touchdown Club function receiving an award for our team, and it was my turn to stand up and speak at the podium, and I got up to the podium, and as I go to speak, a guy in the back of the room yells out, hey, Namath, we're going to kick your behind. And I said, whoa, wait a minute now, wait a minute. We've been hearing that for the last 10 days or 2 weeks, how you're going to kick our behind. Well, I got some news for you, buddy. We're going to win the game, I guarantee you. It was anger. Anger. The next morning, when I saw Coach Eubank, that was the first time that it dawned on me that I had said possibly the wrong thing.
Coach Eubank was over too. He said, Joseph, he said, did you see this? You know, and he said, Namath guaranteed win, okay? And Joe looks at it and he goes, and you can see him going, oh God.
I said, Joe, I asked you not to do this. He just said that's the way I felt. He says, it's your fault. You got us believing it.
Coach Eubank says, look what you've done. You've gone and given these guys fuel to get fired up. And he was right and I was wrong, but I didn't mean to. And I told him I didn't mean to do that. But I also told them that if they needed those clippings to get fired up, they were in big trouble.
And this is Super Bowl III. There's Don Shula. Well, you've all heard and read all kinds of pregame dope during the week. Joe Namath, number 12, has been the one big sidelight. He's come down here and he says the Jets are going to win. In fact, he doesn't even predict it. He says, I guarantee a Jet victory.
I really did have that feeling, man, like, wow, look at this. This is against Johnny Unitas. This is the Baltimore Colts. Here was the establishment. Here was the guy, Johnny U, that I was named after by my boys back home, Joey U.
When the game began, Johnny Unitas, benched with a bad shoulder, could only watch as Namath battled the blitzing Baltimore defense.
Man, we should have had 3 points that time, at least.
The great surprise of Super Bowl III was not that the Jets won, nor that Namath controlled the game.
You check it, though? Yeah, I checked the line. I had something else on.
The great surprise was that Namath controlled the game with his mind rather than his arm. When the Jets found success running the ball to the left side, Namath continued to call running plays to the left side.
If it's working, keep going to it. You know, make them stop it. So, yeah, we worked the left side, and we wore it out as much as we could.
When the Colts double-teamed Don Maynard, Namath passed to George Sauer, who caught 8 passes for over 100 yards.
He's going to go deep, and it is down to Sauer. He's got it, and Namath is picking this vaunted Baltimore secondary to pieces right now.
They checked it off. No penalties. Let's get a touchdown up there.
When we did come with a blitz, other quarterbacks weren't able to handle it, but Namath, with his quick release, was able to get rid of the ball. Instead of us creating havoc with the blitz, they beat the blitz and made big plays that helped them win the football game.
Late in the first half, the Jets broke a scoreless tie with a run to the left side.
Hand off to Snell. He may go, and he's in there. Snell.
By the third quarter, they're yelling at each other. Well, how can you know? I had 2 guys on me. You know, and we knew we had the game about halfway through the third quarter because they couldn't believe that we were picking up all their blitzes and all their shifts the way we were doing.
Football's symbol of individualism was orchestrating the ultimate team victory. In the fourth quarter, Namath never threw a single pass as the Jets ran out the clock.
Joe Namath showed that it could work, and it was a real kind of revolutionary event and shock, sort of to the body politic.
That the game ended with Johnny Unitas directing a futile comeback underscored the extent to which the day belonged to Namath.
This game is over. The New York Jets are the world champions in a stunning upset. They have beaten the Colts handily here today.
When the game ended, there was such a feeling of elation, joy. The teammates, you know, we did it! We did it! It was just, yes, yes, yes. Oh, it was great.
To this day, Namath remains the only quarterback in history to be named Super Bowl MVP without throwing a touchdown pass.
Just a win for outspoken. I don't know about that. I know it's a hell of a loss for those folks that picked it the other way.
We had a very confident team going into that game. And I've often said, hey, who knows? If we played Baltimore 10 times, maybe they'd have won one.
Biography's look at Joe Namath will continue in a moment. But first, Biography.com wants to hear from you. Who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Visit Biography.com and vote now.
How do you invest to help secure your children's future? You start with your dreams and Edward Jones.
My life, my world, it all begins with a dream.
Edward Jones.
If I said feline.
Bacon!
Cats?
Bacon!
Kitty, kitty, kitty?
Bacon, bacon, bacon!
Bacon strips?
It's bacon!
No, it's Bacon Strips brand. Dogs don't know it's not bacon.
The new 255 horsepower Infiniti i35 with the most powerful engine in its class. Don't blink. More power, more grace, more I. The new I-35 from Infinity.
Spend less time getting there and more time being there. The islands of the Bahamas. Save up to $270 on your Bahamas getaway and ask about our small treasure properties. Call Destination Bahamas at 1-800-BAHAMAS.
Who Am I? Presented by Aflac. At age 7, I was sent to live at St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys in Baltimore. I made my major league debut with the Boston Red Sox in 1914. Who am I? Stay tuned for the answer.
Hey, if we get hurt! Whoa! Good thing we got that insurance.
What's that?
Aflac!
What'd you say?
Aflac! Pays you cash if you can't work.
Before that!
I said I'm glad we got that insurance.
Not that.
Aflac. Ask about it at work.
My 60 home runs in one season earned me the title the Sultan of SWAT. In 1936, I became a charter member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Who am I? Babe Ruth. Brought to you by Aflac. Ask about it at work.
On the next investigative report, special edition, two teams.
I've been raised to play football and win state championship.
Worlds apart.
I pray every night just to make sure I wake up the next morning.
Go for the glory.
I've never been proud of a football team.
And a better life.
I'm trying to go to college. I'm trying to become an engineer.
Young gladiators and their field of dreams.
I'll keep giving till I can't give no more.
Inside high school football, an all-new 2-hour investigative report special edition. Tonight at 9, 8 Central on A&E.
The reason Kaiser Miller Ford sells more cars and trucks? Price. Buy now with huge discounts, rebates, or low-rate financing on America's best-selling vehicles, including Taurus, Windstar, F-Series, and the all-new redesigned Explorer. Kaiser Miller has the area's largest selection of Ford-certified pre-owned vehicles with standard extended warranty coverage that you can count on. Kaiser Miller Ford, your Blue Oval certified Ford dealer. Intersection of Ridge Pike and Route 29, Collegeville. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We'll be there for you.
Excuse me, can you take Timmy to tuba practice?
No problem.
Hey, mister, Battle of Gettysburg?
No problem.
Can you take me to the track, please?
No problem.
Dodge Caravan. It offers an exclusive power rear hatch
Hey, my pony.
and 972 seating configurations. Grab Dodge's 7100 powertrain pledge, $2,000 cash allowance, and 5.9% financing. Ford and Honda don't have it.
The Jets' victory in Super Bowl III made Joe Namath, at the age of 25, one of the most famous men in America.
When the Jets traveled in those years, it was like traveling with Frank Sinatra. Wherever he went, the girls were there waiting for his autograph. It was really like traveling with a rock star.
I would think of the athletes that I've seen over 50 years, he would come in third in charisma, behind Ali and DiMaggio. DiMaggio took over any room he walked into while trying to seem as though he didn't want to. Joe Namath never pretended that he didn't enjoy the spotlight. Namath didn't go seeking it, but he enjoyed it when he was in it.
Having conquered the football world, Namath began to explore other avenues, namely Madison Avenue, capitalizing on his popularity with commercials that poked fun at his macho playboy image.
I'm very pleased with your work, Joseph. By the way, what are you doing for dinner tonight?
Joe Namath in Beauty Mist pantyhose? Yes, we did it to prove that Beauty Mist can make any legs look like $1 million.
Now, I don't wear pantyhose, but if Beauty Mist can make my legs look good, imagine what they'll do for yours.
In the years following the Super Bowl, Namath landed roles in several movies, even sharing the lead with Anne Margaret in a biker movie called Cece and Company.
It's hard to believe that by this time tomorrow I'll be back in that 7th Avenue rat race.
So don't go.
I have to.
Why?
You know, that's a very good question.
One of Namath's off-field ventures threatened his career on the field. When Namath's Upper East Side nightclub, Bachelor's 3, began attracting patrons associated with organized crime, NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle took umbrage.
Associating with unsavory people or undesirable people was against the NFL rules. Now, it wasn't very specific, but he had some pictures of some people that had frequented our restaurant, and he said, Joe, these people are coming in your restaurant, can't have you there.
Though there was no suggestion that Namath had done anything illegal, Rozelle ordered him to sell his interest in Bachelor's 3. Namath refused, and on June 6, 1969, less than 5 months removed from Super Bowl III, he retired from football.
I've thought about it more than I thought about anything so far that I've ever done. But it's the only right thing to do. The only right thing to do. And so I am retiring. I'm finished.
I felt like I was getting persecuted for something here that wasn't right, man. And I refused to go along with it until I realized one day I'm sitting over in Doggy Hill in Central Park, and I'm watching all these people walking around while my team's in training camp. And I said, you know what, these people couldn't care less whether old Joe plays football or not, and I'm sitting up here dying because I'm not with my football team. I have to go back and play. I want to go back and play.
Namath's retirement lasted 3 weeks. Never again would he leave any doubt where his heart was.
You know, everybody picks their moment to be a star, or their moment to be what they are, to be all that they can be, if you will. And his was on the football field at that moment. It wasn't out in life generally. When he was a quarterback, that's when he came alive. And what he used to tell me, what he really liked was when he was hurt. He loved it when he'd been beaten up. Maybe it was the Raiders, just nasty sons of bitches trying to kill him. Not trying to hurt him, trying to kill him. And he loved that.
We play him in Oakland, and we broke his jaw. And he just kept playing. I mean, he just kept playing and completing passes. There was only one time in my coaching career that I ever went in another team's locker room, you know, after a game. And I went in and we shook his hand. It was the only time I ever did that. It was Joe Namath.
He suffered a broken wrist, a broken cheekbone, and a separated shoulder. His knees were already so bad when he came out of Alabama that he needed the first of 4 major surgeries to play pro football at all.
His knees were the ugliest knees I've ever seen in pro football. They just weren't shaped right. And different times of the year, they're kind of shaped differently, depending on what was swollen that day. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he functioned on those knees.
He played his last postseason game when he was 26. When most players are just reaching the height of their abilities, pro football's brightest star was reduced to cameo appearances.
The greatest game, the comeback game that we lost, was against the 49ers at the stadium.
In November of 1971, after missing the better part of 2 seasons, he returned to the lineup with the Jets trailing San Francisco 24-7 late in the 3rd quarter.
And he comes in there, and we go down the field, we score a touchdown, and the place is going crazy. We kick off to them, boom, our defense holds, boom, they punt to us. It's halfway through the 4th quarter. Namath comes back, takes the team down, scores a touchdown, you know. The place is going crazy. All right, and we kick off to them, and our defense holds. There's a minute and a half left, and we get the ball on the 8-yard line, and Namath takes right down the whole field. The stadium is going crazy. 1 play left, and he throws a pass, 1 pass to Eddie Bell, and what happened? And the defender is there and catches the ball. We lost 21-17. But the people kept clapping for 15 minutes after the game was over. It was the greatest game, the greatest comeback I've ever seen, you know, as far as even losing the game. But the people and what that guy could do was unbelievable. 15 minutes after the game was over, the people were still clapping.
Namath finished his career with more interceptions than touchdown passes. He completed barely half his throws, and he led his team to only 3 winning seasons, But what Joe Namath meant to the game could not be measured by statistics.
Every player that Joe faced, especially from the old AFL teams, respected Namath tremendously, and no one would take a gratuitous shot at him. They would love to sack him, but if they had a free shot at the guy, they wouldn't take him.
I don't know that we ever let up on him. I think what we did, and I think other teams did too, is we hit him high. If we were going to hit him, and if we were going to hurt him, we were going to hit him and hurt him from the waist up.
I remember a game they played against Denver, and Dave Costa put him down, defensive tackle, put him down with a shot. I think Namath missed the series. And afterwards, Costa in his uniform was in the Jets locker room. He was worried that he'd hurt him. And I talked to him, and I said, why? I mean, it's another player. He said, look at what he's done for all of us. He said, he's the reason why we're making a decent salary. I don't want to hurt him.
After 12 seasons with the Jets, Namath left New York to play one last season for the Los Angeles Rams. It was anything but a Hollywood ending. He started just 4 games for the Rams. On a Monday night in Chicago, his last pass wobbled through the air, falling well short of its target. Back behind the line of scrimmage, Joe Namath could no longer pick himself up from the turf.
He said, Frank, he said, I just couldn't play anymore. He says, I really, honestly couldn't play.
In 1977, after nearly 2 decades on the gridiron and in the spotlight, it was time for Joe Namath to begin life after football.
You're watching Joe Namath, part of NFL Greats Week on Biography.
How do they see through the stockings?
How do they see through the stockings? They're sheer.
Right.
But you're missing the point of the story. The woman's car is commandeered, stranding her miles from the nearest FedEx location.
She's toast?
No. Directly across the street, her salvation.
Directly across the street?
Technically, it was kitty corner, but stay with me. Is it a mirage?
I don't know.
Is it a miracle?
Yes.
No. It's one of thousands of FedEx Express drop boxes strategically located at post office locations coast to coast.
Keeping the engines of commerce
well lubed. Precisely.
Just stay in its tracks.
Just stay in its tracks.
The Jaguar X-Type, the only car in its class with all-wheel drive, standard. For exceptional values on the X-Type, visit your Jaguar retailer today.
Perfect Jack, perfect Jill. What are the odds of fate bringing this perfectly perfect couple together? Slim to none. Give fate a twist with Match.com. Just browse around and pretty soon you're finding people you like, looking for people like you. Match.com. Click here. Waiting for destiny to find the love of your life?
Message 2614.
Destiny, I know you're there.
Take a number. Put destiny in your own hands with Match.com. Just browse around and pretty soon you're finding people you like, looking for people like you. Match.com. Click here.
On the next investigative report, special edition, 2 teams.
I've been raised to play football and win state championships.
Worlds apart.
I pray every night just to make sure I wake up the next morning.
Go for the glory.
I've never been proud of a football team.
And a better life.
I'm trying to go to college. I'm trying to become an engineer.
Young gladiators and their field of dreams.
I'll keep giving till I can't give no more.
Inside high school football, an all-new 2-hour investigative report special edition. Tonight at 9, 8 Central on A&E.
There's a place where extraordinary adventures begin and mysteries are solved every day. Visit and shop A&E.com for a unique gift or something special for you. Inspiration at your fingertips. Escape the ordinary. Shop A&E.com.
Your pet's exact same heartworm and flea medications delivered to your door for less than you're paying now.
It costs less than buying from my veterinarian.
It only takes a phone call.
I saved a visit to my vet's office. I didn't have to leave home.
Pet Meds delivers my pet's medication right to my door.
It's cheaper and more convenient than buying from my vet.
I save time and money.
1-888-PET-MEDS. We deliver savings and convenience on HeartGuard, Advantage, Frontline, and all other pet medications. Call to order now or order online.
After retiring from pro football in 1977, Joe Namath faced the most difficult question a pro athlete has to answer: what to do when the game is over.
There was a time after I'd retired from pro football, and I was a loose horse, you know? I was, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to be productive, or how am I going to feel right with this?
he answered his questions the way many aging bachelors do.
I never lived with a lady. I thought I was in love a few times in my life. And don't you know it, the first girl I lived with when I was 41 years old, we ended up getting married. And we started a family, and it was wonderful.
Namath married actress Deborah Mays in 1984. Before long, he was the doting father of 2 daughters.
As wild as he was as a bachelor, as much as he was devoted to bachelorhood, that's how great a father he was to the girls.
Your priorities change in life, you know? They should. You take on a family, that's got to become your priority.
In 1985, Namath was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
One day I was sitting home and the phone rang, and I said, hello. And he says, Coach, this is Joe Namath. And he says, you know I'm being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I said, yeah, Joe, and I'm real happy about it. Congratulations. And he said, I want to know if you'll introduce me. And I didn't know what to say, and I said, Joe, I'd be glad to. Joe has never forgotten the people back home, and especially the people that helped him get where he is today.
At the University of Alabama, I was mighty lucky to be working under a gentleman named Paul Bryant. Coach Bryant and Mrs. Bryant, wherever you are, we miss you.
I've never heard Joe say a negative word about any of his coaches. I've never heard Joe say a negative word about any of his teammates. And I think that's why Joe, amongst his peers, rates so high.
If you wanted to look for friendship, you could look at Namath. If you wanted to look at character, you would look at Namath. Joe was special, and I don't like to think of him as anything other than special.
When you work in those close quarters for 8 months a year, 9 months a year with 50, 60 other people, and some of them aren't playing with a full deck, you better learn how to get along with people. Life is that way. You're always dealing with people in life. And you don't do much on your own in life. Football convinced me that life is a team game.
He has imparted the team message for 30 years at his summer football camp, a job made significantly easier in 1992 when Namath had both of his knees replaced. Namath has also continued his acting on the stage and on television. There may be no better indicator of Namath's enduring status than a string of TV guest appearances that spans 3 decades.
Hello.
It's you! It's him! You're Joe Namath!
Hey, my man! Where have you been? A long time!
In 1999, Namath's years of post-football bliss were interrupted when his wife left him after 14 years.
It was a big blow. That was the toughest blow I think he's ever taken, really.
The most important thing to me in the world was my children, and is my children. And having a family split up after 14 years or so was very difficult, still difficult.
What happened is that after the divorce, the girls lived with him, and then about 8 months or 10 months after that happened, the finalization of the divorce, his wife talked the girls into moving out to California, and that really broke his heart, and he had a real tough time with that.
It's still good. It's not as good as it was, but we're going to make it better. And, you know, you learn to deal with things, man. As long as you're healthy, you can deal with things. My parents both passed away a few years ago in their mid-80s. Figured, well, you know, if Mom and Dad lived to be 85, then old Joe's probably going to live to be 100. So if I'm going to live to be 100, that means I'm in the early third quarter of my life. And I look at life kind of as a football game. I've seen a lot of games won and lost in that third and fourth quarter. So I'm in the early third quarter. I've got a long way to go.
No matter how long he lives, it is unlikely that Joe Willie Namath will outlast the legend of Broadway Joe.
Not many people in the real scheme of things have seen Joe Namath play, certainly live. They've seen you know, that kind of hunch-shouldered run. They've seen him at the llama skin rugs. They've seen him with his sunglasses on. They've seen him guaranteeing that they're going to beat the Colts. They've seen a million times him raise his finger after they win the Super Bowl. But the idea of an upstart, rebellious young man overthrowing the established order, that's the idea of Joe Namath. And that idea is one that will resonate forever with anybody that ever gets a little too complacent. They'll always think, remember Joe Namath.
I think they forget that Joe's older now. When people think of Joe, they still think of Joe Namath in a football uniform for the New York Jets. He's still Broadway Joe, and that's great. You know, that's the way it should be.
When the first Super Bowl was played here at the Los Angeles Coliseum, more than 30,000 seats went unfilled, and America was curious about the game, but not passionate. 2 years later, Joe Namath and his Jets forever changed the championship game and its impact on television in the nation. Super Bowl 36 will be a spectacle, but it will be hard to measure up to the theatrical flair Namath provided 33 years ago that cemented his legendary status. Thanks for joining me for NFL Greats Week. For Biography, I'm Al Michaels. Good night.